Hello students, welcome to another lecture of human anatomy and physiology, and today we will be studying about the transport of different substances across the cell membrane. So let's start. Now, as we all know that the structure of the plasma membrane, it is such that it provides for the movement of substances in and out of the cell. Right, so it is basically a semi-permeable membrane which allows the movement of substances. Right, now movement of substances across the cell membrane is very important. Why? Because it is important for the cell to take certain nutrients from outside, and it is also very important for the cell to remove the waste products outside its cell environment, right? So the movement of substances, of nutrients as well as of waste material is very important, right? So in this particular lecture we will be studying about the different mechanism through which the transport of different substances across the cell membrane is initiated, or the methods through which substances can move across the cell membrane. Now, the transport across cell membrane can be divided into two broad categories, one being the passive transport and the other being the active transport. This is further subdivided into different categories, like the passive transport can be divided into diffusion, facilitated diffusion and osmosis, and active transport can be divided into the sodium-potassium pump and bulk transport. We will be studying about these in details in the coming slide. Now, diffusion is the first category of passive transport. So, passive transport mainly occurs when the substance can cross the semi-permeable plasma membrane without the use of any energy, right? The substance basically moves from a high concentration area to low concentration area. Passive transport is mainly termed as a downhill process. Downhill process means substances are moving from high concentration to low concentration without using energy, right? So the first method in passive transport is diffusion. Now, diffusion is a very known phenomena for each one of us. You must have studied this in your 11th-12th standard also. So, diffusion is a process of passive transport in which the molecules, they move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, right? Until there is a equal concentration on both sides of the semi-permeable membrane. As you can see in this particular image, the upper side is your extracellular fluid and the lower side is your cytoplasm. In the first column, you can see that a lot of molecules are there in the extracellular fluid, but in the cytoplasm, there aren't any molecules, right? So in the second section, you can see that molecules have started moving to the cytoplasm, and they will keep moving to the cytoplasm until an equal concentration on both the sides is achieved, right? So this is termed as diffusion. The molecules are moving from a high concentration area to a low concentration area. Now the second subdivision is your facilitated diffusion. This passive process is mainly used by some molecules that are unable to diffuse through the semi-permeable membrane unaided, without any support, right? For example, glucose and amino acids, they mainly require a carrier molecules to carry them from one area to the other, right? So this particular diffusion is a process by which molecules can be transported across the plasma membrane with the help of membrane protein, right? They need a protein, they need a receptor basically to move from one area to the other. So with the help of that particular receptor or the membrane protein, these substances can be transported across. Now the third category is your osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane from an area of low solute concentration to an area of high solute concentration, right? In diffusion, we studied that diffusion was the movement of molecules, and osmosis, in osmosis, it is the movement of water across what? Across a semi-permeable membrane from a low solute concentration to a high solute concentration. In a particular solution, there are two components, one being your solute and the other being your solvent. Solute is the solid part and solvent is the liquid part. For example, when you mix sugar in water, so the water is your solvent and sugar is your solute, right? So in osmosis what happens? Water or the liquid moves from an area where the concentration of solute is low to where the concentration of solute is high, right? To basically equalize it, right? So this is your osmosis. Now the second category was your active transport. So active transport is the transport of substances up their concentration, which is known as uphill, from an area where the concentration is low to an area where the concentration is high, right? So from low concentration to the high concentration, when the molecules move with the help of an energy source, that is termed as active transport, right? Now the carrier site are very specific and they can only be used by one substance. Therefore, the rate of movement depends upon the number of sites which are available for the transport, and the energy source is mainly in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now in this, the first category was the sodium potassium pump. So this active transport mechanism maintains the unequal concentration of sodium and potassium ion on either side of the plasma membrane. All cells possess this particular type of pump, which indirectly or directly supports all other transport mechanism, because the concentration of sodium and potassium is very important for the overall well-being of a particular cell, right? Now this active transport mechanism maintains the unequal concentration of sodium and potassium ions on either side of the plasma membrane with the help of ATP as its energy source. Now potassium levels, they are higher inside the cell as compared to outside. Therefore it is a very important intracellular ion which is present inside the cell. And sodium concentrations are higher outside the cell as compared to inside the cell, and therefore they are a very important extracellular ion. Now potassium levels, they are much higher inside the cell as compared to outside the cell, and therefore they are one of the most important intracellular cation. And sodium levels, they are much higher outside the cell as compared to inside, and it is the principal extracellular cation, right? So these ions, they tend to diffuse down their concentration gradient, meaning that potassium ion outside and sodium ion inside the cell, in order to maintain their concentration gradient. Now next comes your bulk transport. So bulk transport is mainly the transport of particles which are too large to cross the cell membrane, and this particular transport mainly occurs through processes, either pinocytosis or phagocytosis. Pinocytosis is termed as cell drinking and phagocytosis is termed as cell eating, right? So these particles, they are mainly engulfed by the extensions of the cytoplasm, which encloses them, forming a membrane bound vacuoles. And pinocytosis mainly allows the cell to bring in fluid. In phagocytosis, larger particles are taken up in the cell, and in pinocytosis, water is taken up in the cell, right? Then lysosomes, they adhere to the vacuoles which are formed, and they start releasing enzyme which ultimately digest the content which are present in the vacuole. So this is basically a comparative diagram of exocytosis and endocytosis. Exocytosis is moving substances out of the cell, and endocytosis is taking substances inside the cell and finally destroying them. And endocytosis is further divided into phagocytosis and pinocytosis. So thank you so much, dear students. This was all in today's lecture. If you have any queries, any doubt in today's lecture, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for attending the class.